Let's talk about it all with Helima Croft, Managing Director, Global Head of Commodity Strategy at RBC Capital Markets, also a CNBC contributor. First off, the CPC pipeline, by the way, co-owned by Chevron. Right. ExxonMobil buys some oil from it. What do we know about the damage to this loading port?
We know that one of the single mooring points is down.
There's three. They load 3 ships at a time.
They usually have to use 2 of them, though. One was already in for repair. So that is the reason why the loadings are basically just a fraction of what they normally load. The big question, though, is this the one-off attack on this pipeline and on the terminal, or are we at a start of a new phase in this conflict? Because, Brian, we also had over the weekend 2 sanctioned Shadow Fleet tankers also struck by Ukrainian drones en route to the same port. And last night, there was another tanker struck. So 3 Russian tankers have been struck over the weekend, as well as this pipeline.
So oil's up a little bit, but let's be clear, it's still below $60 a barrel, well lower than it was. It's not at $100 a barrel. We're not making more of that. But we've talked a lot about these ongoing peace talks, potential peace talks with Russia and Ukraine. There were some in Miami over the weekend. Is there a way could these attacks help or hurt the peace? I could see them helping in a way if Russia gets sick of being blown up.
Well, I think the question is, the Russians decide they have to make more concessions because they are under attack. I mean, it's important to understand that Ukraine does not need U.S. technology for these attacks. They have sophisticated drone capabilities, and they are doing these attacks with their own technology. The question is, does Vladimir Putin feel squeezed by these attacks and the U.S. sanctions on Rosneft and Lukoil? When those sanctions took effect, we were expecting the market to rally on that. But that very same day, we had the announcement of the Wickoff, Kushner, Kirill Dmitriev peace proposal, and everyone in the market is now thinking we're going to get an off-ramp to this war. I think there's a lot of skepticism in Europe that Russia is going to make any meaningful concessions. I think Europe still wants Ukraine having a path into NATO. So unclear that this is really going to be the proposal that brings this war to an end.
It's hard for me to hold these 2 things in my head at the same time, which is when you probably saw the Journal today talking about Germany's preparations for war with Russia by 2030 and thinking about all the strikes that we've seen across, Europe and what might be behind that. And at the same time, to Brian's point, I look up the other day, I go, is WTI at 55?
Right. I think there's a view that President Trump can manifest this peace agreement, because if we look at what's happened with Gaza, he was able to basically bring the active fighting to an end in Gaza. But when we talk about Russia, Ukraine, there are so many important stakeholders that have not bought into this, and Ukraine gets a vote. And we saw that over the weekend with these attacks. This was an escalation on the part of Ukraine. And if they continue targeting Black Sea tankers, this pipeline, do we have to raise a risk profile for the entire Black Sea commodity corridor? Because it's not just oil. It is grains. There's a variety of commodities that go through that port.
So to Kelly's point about oil where it is, here's the dirty secret, which even with oil in the 50s, U.S. oil production has never been higher. We're at 13.84 million barrels a day.
That's amazing.
Yeah, you'd think it would go down.
What's the incentive?
Money.
Right, but I mean, you'd think at some point
it might go down.
And I keep hearing the Permian is tapped out, or the marginal barrel takes more investment.
In a couple years, they might be.
Yeah.
But I do wonder, there's this whole hanging Venezuela.
Right.
Okay, we've talked about it a lot. Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro,
and
dictator.
President Trump is talking about it this afternoon with his advisors.
This afternoon.
This afternoon.
So what do we know about that conversation and what it might mean for Maduro's future? Is it possible that that by force or coercion, we, the U.S., remove Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela?
I mean, if you're a betting person with this much U.S. military assets in the region, you'd have to assume that the end game is Maduro gone. Now, I'm sure President Trump would like Nicolas Maduro just to say, like, I'm leaving on my own. You can roll these forces back. But if you're Nicolas Maduro, let's say you go to Madrid, you are not out of the loose in terms of potential prosecution. You could have the International Criminal Court issue an indictment against you. And the question is, where are you safe if you leave Venezuela from being prosecuted in The Hague?
If we got him